But let's get rocking and rolling. Uh, so we're gonna walk through some of the fundamentals today. I'll be honest. Uh, there's normally three things that I tell every lawyer I work with. You might have seen some of the that post I had up just up there, and I'll share that after this so people can see it. And that's kind of my overarching philosophy to what stands out in blogging. There are three main points, and we've hit actually some of the other ones in the process of these other webinars. So the three things that I tell lawyers all the time are write to the medium, be proactive, and think strategically. We talked about thinking strategically in our last webinar last month. This is going to be more about writing to the medium, remembering where your writing is going, that it is writing for a blog, and what that looks like and why it works. For those who don't know, my name is Colin O'Keefe. I am director of product at LexBlog. So I work with the brainiacs who are building our product. I'm not one myself, but I try to bring the perspective of the user, the reader, and also the blogger, but similarly the digital marketing manager or the practice development specialist. I worked at LexBlog for a number of years, for about a decade, before stepping away to work 4 years for the Seattle Mariners. And I'm now back at LexBlog in this product role. I will say I've been blogging for, it's crazy how quickly the time goes by, probably close to 20 years now myself. So I'll mix in a little bit of stuff from my own experience, stuff from a bit of a journalism background as well. And then, of course, just what I've seen in reviewing all the blog posts that come across our network, because that's what I've done for the bulk of my time at LexBlog, and for still do today and we'll do after this, is take a look at what's flowing across our network, highlight some posts, and share those on lexblog.com. But let's dive into what we're going to talk about today. So here's the agenda. It looks relatively basic. I promise we've got more than just a little bit here, but I want to hit on just reflecting on how we consume content, looking at our own personal experiences, thinking about that a little bit. I hope my perspective isn't unique. I can't imagine that it is, but just taking a look at, hey, here's how people traditionally consume content and what goes into that. We'll get into some basic fundamentals and common questions that I always hear. I will say, if you have a question, feel free to drop it in whenever. We'll have time at the end too. But if you have a question as we're rolling through and you want to make sure that we hit it, or heck, if you want to fire a link my way, we may be even able to open it up and take a peek and give you some feedback. But don't hesitate to drop those in. I'm happy to help. This can be an interactive session for you. But yeah, we'll hit on some of the basic fundamentals. And then the biggest thing is making your posts scannable, making them visually appealing for people so they don't immediately back out of their posts. So with that, let's dive into the thinking about how we consume content, because it's a lot different than we did 30 years ago, but it's also even a lot different than we did 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 3 years ago. So let's take a look at that. I think something that people often forget when it comes to producing content, oftentimes you're just thinking, let me get an article and let me get it out there. Because that's hard enough the way that it is. I mean, it takes time to write. There's a lot that goes into it. Oftentimes you're setting aside time. You want to make sure it's good. You want to do this. So you're like, man, let me just crush this piece and get all the points out there that I want to get out there. But it's important to remember how people get to blog posts, how people get to pages on the web. Oftentimes, your content is arrived at in somewhat of a passive way. Somebody may have emailed it to you, whether that be a personal email or an email notification or something of that ilk. It wasn't as if you were looking for a piece of content to sit down and read it and working your way through. They may have seen it on social, perhaps from someone you trust, but also could have just been from a random. I mean, I see on LinkedIn sometimes it'll be, hey, your colleague liked this person, or your connection liked this post or commented on it. So you may get stuff in your feed that is from people you may not have otherwise known, but you just saw it on social, or somebody could just text it over to you. But you're having content pushed towards you uh, without you necessarily going out and seeking it out. So you may not have been looking for a post to read on the FTC banning non-competes yesterday, but it's all over your newsfeed. You may not have been looking for a post on best practices on a certain thing, but there are certain conditions that may lead to you opening it up and giving it a read. Um, but still remember that attention span is very short. People are moving through things very quickly. But yeah, consider when and how you're reading the content as well. It's oftentimes on mobile. People are moving through the world. They could be standing. I mean, I could, and heck, there are sometimes where people are, checking their phones during meetings. They could be doing something else completely. Probably not going to get a lot of long-lasting attention when other people are working on other stuff or what have you. Um, Regardless, people probably haven't set aside time to read the post. It's more rare in today's world where people are, all right, I've set this aside and I plan on reading this entire thing beginning to end right now. I've cleared 15 minutes for this and I'm going to work my way through it. No, I mean, people are moving so much faster through the world, and I mean, I know it's cliche to say at this point, but attention spans are very, very short. But also think about even when you are specifically thinking about working through and trying to find information, like if it is for work. Um, I don't know about you, but when I'm looking through content for work, I was just for this presentation, trying to find like the occasional stat and stuff like that to work that in here. I'm opening a page, going back, opening it, going back, opening, going back. When you are not going to a trusted publication, when you're just, you don't know the publication already, you don't have a relationship with that publication, you are so quick to judge, hey, does this have what I'm looking for? Am I gonna be able to, does it have what I'm looking for? Is it possible that I'll even be able to find what I'm looking for within the content or within the post itself? So it's very difficult, and people are very, very quick to judgment. So there's a lot of reasons why you really got to get people's attention quickly, and not necessarily just their attention, but also ease their anxiety, ease concerns, and just be able to demonstrate, hey, this post is going to have what you're looking for, or even theoretically, this post may not have what you're looking for. But you want to make that process as easy as possible because people will judge what you're doing very quickly. And we'll get into what I mean by that. But yeah, here are the things people think when starting to read a post. You open it up. Hey, is this for me? Is this written for the person that I am? And you can write in a way that's for a lot of people, but you can also write in a way that's for a very narrow group of people. So you open it up, you're like, hey, is this even for me? Will I be able to comprehend the information presented? Is it written in a style that I'll be able to work my way through? Will I be able to understand the terminology that this person uses? And then of course, does it even have the information that I need? If I'm looking for a answer to a specific question, is it in this post or is it not? And I'm going to give it a quick once over. And if I think it might be in there, I'll keep reading. If I think it not, I won't. Is it interesting? Uh, basically, is this just dry copy? A lot of times, I think a lot of the content out there on the web, particularly as it pertains to Google, is starting to look very, very, very similar. And we'll talk more about this, but you can tell it's written for search. It's not really written for people. It's written to draw people in, and then it ends up being not that helpful. So you look at it and you might go, is this even interesting? Is this what I'm looking for? Or, do I even want to read it? Is it entertaining? If I am, potentially setting aside time to work through something, or say, it could have been emailed to me through a blog I already subscribed to. Does it look like it's going to be interesting? Does it look like something that is going to entertain me? Not that that's what we're always looking to do with a blog post, entertain other folks, but is it something that's going to be interesting? Or you may open it up and think, hey, this is tacky as heck. Looks really like it was written for SEO, or it looks really salesy. Or otherwise you may go, oh, huh, that's interesting. I'm able to digest everything that's in here and I'm going to keep working through it. So there's a lot of thoughts that like immediately jump into people's mind when they open up a post. It's, obviously the first hurdle that you have to clear with a blog post is getting people to open it in the first place, of course. But as we talked about in previous webinars, the goal with what we do at LexBlog and with what you all do with your blogs is not to get visits on a website. It's not to make the number of unique visits go from X to Y. The goal is to bring in work, and you bring in work with actual connections with actual people. So if people are opening up your posts and backing right out, they're not being shared. They're not going other places. It's not resonating with folks. And as a result, you're not going to get the work that you're trying to get. But just remember, and I'd say observe the things that you do when you're consuming content, even just during the rest of the day today. How quick are you to judge something? I don't know about you, but if I'm searching and I'm researching something, trying to find something like that, I don't know the quality publication to go to, I am opening and closing, new tab, close that tab, new tab, close this tab. Okay, where was that one? That one's okay. But you're constantly evaluating, and you're evaluating very quickly. So keep that in mind. And honestly, take a look, like just try to reflect as you go through, even just today, what the things you think when you first open up something and the pace at which you open and close things. And then also what makes you leave something open and work your way through it. So what are, some of the lessons from this introspection? First and foremost, if you're not writing for people, you're not writing for people, which is, kind of what I was hitting on there. And it sounds really on the nose, but hey, if you're writing these posts that are all just explicitly, you can tell it's more so for SEO than for anything else. I think that's a little bit less common in the law, particularly in the practice areas that we often work with typically, more sophisticated clients. You see a little bit less of that. But again, if you're just looking and you're saying, hey, I want to write this post so I can slide it over to my boss, get it out there. We had to make sure that, yesterday's big FTC news is just covered. We have the synopsis, we have the summary that everyone else has, and we just have to have something just to get it up there. It will look like you just had to have something just to get it up there to make sure that that's the case. So if you're not writing for people, if you're not looking at it and going, hey, here's what people need to know about this, or here are the questions that I'm getting from my clientele, it'll be clear that you're not writing for people and it won't resonate with folks. First off, don't scare people off, I guess, unless you want to. Some people, and what I mean by that is having that legalese, the case citations, the footnotes, and what have you. Sometimes, honestly, we have lawyers who love their footnotes. They love the way that they do things, and I can't fault them. The blog is your own. Do what you want. And sometimes people say, it's who I am. I want to look like a sophisticated lawyer. I want to look like I'm really technical, like I'm really buttoned up, and I'm writing explicitly for other lawyers who understand these sophisticated matters. But if you're not trying to do that, if you're trying to broaden your audience, remember, even just the look of those types of things in a post can potentially scare people off. This is the big one, scannable. People need to find what they need, and they need to find it quickly. They're going to evaluate your post on, hey, is what I have in here, and will I be able to find it? And then, you still have to take care of helping them actually find it, not just knowing that it might be possible. And then, yeah, if they need to read it all, if you want them to read all of it to have it really resonate with them, they have to want to as well. So if it's really hard to read and really hard to work through, it is remarkably easy to just go somewhere else. So make sure that you're writing in a way that is understandable, that is conversational, that is for a person, as opposed to, for the ether or for SEO or what have you. Remember that you are, it seems really rudimentary to say, hey, you have to write in an interesting way to make sure that people read your content, but you do have to remember that, hey, let's be interesting, let's be casual, let's be personable, let's be honest. It makes a big, big difference. And then now we'll get into some of the fundamentals of like what that means, what it looks like, so you can understand what we're going through and what you're trying to do. Again, this is some of the fundamental stuff, and if you have questions, let me know, but wanted to hit on some of the real basic stuff here. This is, like I said, this is the big kind of the overarching thesis to this kind of philosophy. It's not everything that goes into blogging, but I think for me and for the lawyers who tend to crush it and bring in work, they in a lot of times they're not doing it intentionally. It just is coming naturally. But this is as simply as I can put it, as write to the medium, and the medium that you're writing on, it is a blog. It is supposed to be quicker and a little bit less formal. You're supposed to be able to get stuff up on the web easily and quickly. Just, earlier this week, I was working with Cypher Shaw and their trade secrets blog because there was this big ruling coming down on the FTC. And I'm not trying to talk out of school, but just give you a little bit of anecdote. They were like, "Hey, what do we do to live blog something? How do we get something out there that's a live blog?" Because they were live blogging that FTC announcement yesterday. And you've probably seen it in the news. I'm sorry, it's like all that's on the brain, but after this, I'll sort through like 30 posts that are covering it and highlighting those. But anyway, they reached out with, yeah, how do we live blog? What are we supposed to do? And, in working with them, it was, actually, this is kind of just what blogs are built for. You can get a casual conversation up really easily. It updates instantly. You can add to posts as you go. You can format it in a way that it looks like a chat back and forth between two people. That's blogging is built for the stuff I'm describing, getting posts up quickly, getting them up in a casual way, sending them directly to people. But yeah, it's supposed to be something that you can easily do. That's why it's on the web. That's why it's not supposed to be okay, this has to go to this corner of the website or that corner. The tech is all built for this to be casual, for it to be something that resonates with people. And again, it's personal, it's friendly, it's familiar. You're looking to build an actual relationship with folks. It's a publication that you're running, and it should almost feel a little bit, sometimes like a journal too, where you're sharing your own personal experiences and you're sharing your unique perspective. I know that's a little bit more challenging when it comes to these big group blogs, for example, but that doesn't mean that it can't be done, that you can't write in a way that somebody can easily tell, oh, this is this person behind the blog. This is coming from that person. And I can tell by the way that they're writing it. I can tell it's written by a real person. And, honestly, on the group blogs, you almost want to get to a point where somebody feels, oh, I really like the content that Robert puts out. Oh, we got a good Robert piece up today. You want people to kind of be able to tell. I know you want to have a consistent voice and a consistent tone, something that is polished, of course. But you do want to be personal. You want to be friendly. You want to be familiar. Also, remember what a blog is not. It's not a white paper. It's not a brief, an article, or a contract or something of that ilk. So it doesn't have to feel like that. You don't have to try to make this into something that it isn't. If you feel like you're writing an extended white paper on what this FTC ruling means, or what Biden potentially winning could mean on Russian sanctions or what have you, if it's feeling dense, it's feeling thick, if it's feeling like a white paper, you strayed a little bit off the path. Honestly, I've heard this commented on by other people. The writing format that it's probably most like is an email. A lot of times with a blog post, you're often just like, hey, here's this thing I saw. Here's a quote from this thing I saw. Here's why it was interesting. Be the same thing as if you sent a blog post to a colleague. I have a family friend named Buzz who's always sending over stuff about things that our family is interested in, whether it's, for me, e-bikes or baseball or Gonzaga basketball or what have you. But it's the same thing as if you were like, hey, I owe somebody a quick email with 5 points on something. That's blog writing is closer to that than it is to a brief or a traditional article. And by crafting it this way, it fits into some of the other stuff that we were talking about. When you write it in this way, it will come naturally. So let's get into some of the basic fundamentals of this. What does this look like? What does that include? Again, we're keeping it real basic. I want to hit some stuff as somewhat of a refresher, but also, this is foundational stuff. This is the thing that I think personally is, this presentation is kind of the stuff that's the easiest, I think, for lawyers to do for the most part, as far as like what the effort versus output is. When it comes to like networking through your blog, that's going to be a little bit more advanced, and it takes a little bit more thought and a little bit more time. When it comes to this stuff, a lot of it is aimed at, a lot of it, when done right, will also make blogging easier. So this is a foundational thing where if you do it, you will instantly stand out from other law bloggers. You will stand out from the vast majority, because the vast majority of law bloggers and law firms don't do things this way. They don't necessarily write content in a way that is meant to be read on the web and meant to be read on the go and meant to be read, uh, you know, meant to be examined quickly. Um, I will say firms are getting better and better and better at it as the years go on, but it's still a big differentiator. And this is the type of thing that gets people subscribed and gets them coming back because they know, hey, this blog's for me. The way that this person writes is a way that I like to read. So let's dive into some of like the really, really basic stuff, some common questions and stuff like that as well. And this is somewhat of the science of it. This is a not age old because it's about reading on the web, but you've probably seen this before. And this is the way that people traditionally look at a page when they first open it up. And, a lot of it comes from just the way that we've always been reading things left to right, top to bottom. So it's not looking that surprising, but you still have, you can see that this is relatively straightforward. It isn't a surprise. It's still good to keep in mind, but also you have to get people quick. They're going to open up the page and they're going to look in these places really quickly and they're going to examine those places to see, does this have what I'm looking for? Is this going to answer the question that I have? Is it going to cover the topic in a way that I want to see it covered? Similarly, you have to get people really quick. Also, it doesn't hurt to include synopsis up top, or too long didn't read is what that TLDR is. I think going back to Seifert again, I'll give you a quick, I bet you I can find one on the fly here. This is our blog post, but if I go to California, and there are a lot of firms that do this. I'm not just trying to be like only Seifert does this, because a lot of firms do this, but I just want to show you an example, and I probably have in past presentations as well. But yeah, we'll go to Cal peculiarities. California employment law stuff is always changing, but you can see if you're reading this in an F pattern, you'd get the title, but then you'd also very quickly get the Seifert synopsis. So you can get, hey, California healthcare employers are facing prime time levels of cost of litigation based on miscalculations of regular pay. So even if you were like, hey, this is it for me? Is it going to cover what I'm looking for? Is it something I need to know about? Is another part of it. If somebody opened this up via email notification because they were subscribed, they may go, oh yeah, I gotta get the key stuff here. And yeah, we'll come back to this post too, because this is a good example of a scannable post as well. It's nice when so I credit to, again, firms have dramatically improved on this over the years. We have long relationships with firms who do this really well. But yeah, it's nice when I can go, oh, I know who is going to have this right now on the fly, and it's Cal Peculiarities is a good one to remember. So I always check that out. Also, a little side point. This is going to sound crazy, but there's like this adage that you don't want to break the law while you're breaking the law. You don't want to do two things at once. I don't know why that ties me to it, but similarly to in picking a niche, you want to pick a niche within a niche. So they want to say, hey, we're going to cover employment law. You don't just want to cover employment law. They cover California employment law, and do a good job at it. So this is the F pattern. They give you a little, it can help to have that TLDR up top too, like I mentioned. This is a question we get all of the time. What makes for a good blog post title? What stands out? What do I do? There is no perfect title, I will say. First and foremost, there is no perfect title. I would say the most important thing to remember off the top, and I know I keep saying this over and over and over again, and apologies for if you're like, I know, right, for people. But honestly, if you write for people, if you write and say, hey, I'm trying to write this in a way that when people read it, it resonates, it sends a point, you will do well. Also, consider the context for where your title will appear. So this is one where we're talking about off the page a little bit before we even get to the post, but it is an important part of it. I would say the title is probably the most important element when it comes to having somebody open your post from someplace else. Because you got to think about the places where your title appears. It appears as a preview in text messages, social feeds, email a little bit less so. A lot of times it's just a URL, but search results, you get the title in there as well. There's always that preview. And it may show up in an inbox as well. This is from the dashboard of lexblog.com because I wanted to pull together the fact that, your clients are not getting posts theoretically from all of the law firms that I'm seeing produce content on the web. But I wanted to highlight how there can be a lot of overlap here. These are the posts just from this morning that mention FTC. This is hitting on the big ruling yesterday. And I wanted to show that there can be some difference there, like what blends together, what are you likely to click on? So like, I know the FTC banned non-competes yesterday. So I don't know if it'll show my mouse here, but up top, FTC bans non-competes. Okay, I got that. FTC votes to ban non-competes. Sweet. This third one is starting to get my attention though. FTC non-compete ban already challenged, unlikely to ever take effect. Even me as like a general person who just cares about the sphere of employment law and what's going on in the world, I'm like, oh, this probably is going to get shot down. Is it going to be the Supreme Court? I'm going to open that and take a look. Businesses challenge FTC's ban. It's a step. Again, if these are your posts, I'm not trying to hit your heart. None of these are bad titles per se. I'm just trying to highlight what potentially stands out. Businesses challenge, FTC finalizes, got it. The FTC's final rule banning non-competes. It could have been a lot worse. That's another one where I'm like, oh, where did we think this was going to go? I mean, it seemed like they just about banned all of them except for a couple, so I don't know how it could have been much worse. I'd like to take a look at that and see what's in there. So again, consider to context for your title appear. That's this here, but don't forget to include your unique message. Obviously, you want to have a unique message in the post itself. If your post just basically says, hey, the FTC banned non-competes everywhere. The New York Times can have that. A reporter can have that. I, without any legal expertise in this area, can write a post that says the FTC is banning non-competes and here's how they arrived at that. What I can't hit and where you're differentiating yourself as a lawyer, as a law blogger is, here's what this means. Here's my perspective on it. So you obviously have to have that element in a blog post. But once you have that in there, it helps to have it in the title as well, because somebody can see this is going to have more than just this happened. It's going to even have more than this happened, and here's what it means. It's going to have this happened, and it means blank. And that's going to get people's attention and get them to open it up. So include that unique message, include that unique perspective when you can. I know it can be challenging. SEO is obviously important. You want to rank well. You want to make sure that your title matches the stuff that you're covering. Maybe this is controversial to say, and LexBlog could get hammered by a company that's, hey, LexBlog doesn't care about SEO. We care a lot about it, but one of the things that I will say is, if you are writing in a way that is for people and that's your intent, Google is always trying to emulate that. So if somebody's searching for a term, Google is trying to help people arrive at that by acting like a person, what looks helpful. So if you make sure that you're saying FTC ban non-competes or is challenged and you're hitting those big things, that's good. But you don't want to write a title that is exclusively for SEO and have your post not be clicked on and opened or linked to, which helps SEO in the first place, because the title is just not very good and people can tell that it's written for SEO. Per HubSpot, they say it's about 60 characters, between 8 and 12 words for more shares. These are probably all within that range. You don't want to have the absolutely massive title. Like, I will say that's one of the biggest. This is terrible. Apologize for my Gen Z slang because I'm by very far from Gen Z. But what gives people the ick really quickly, or at least me, is like if you see a blog post and it has like a 2-sentence title or what should be a 2-sentence title, I instantly will think this person doesn't really know how to work a computer or like what things look like on the web. And it is unlikely that this post is for me as opposed to other people that are in a similar demographic to that person. So be mindful of that. If you have like a 4-line title, probably need to tighten it up a little bit. That's also a spot where AI can help a little bit. That's one where with Lou on our platform, you can go in and craft a couple titles. I can even show you really quickly. Hopefully we logged in here. That's, I will say, so where AI really excels, we logged in? We'll leave it out. Where AI really excels is turning long language into short language. So that's where you can really trust it to say, hey, take this longer bit of information, this longer bit of language, and turn it into shorter, different language, and give me a couple options for it. That's where AI can really excel, is with titles. So that's a spot to lean on it. If you have access to Lou on our platform, utilize that. If you don't, reach out to me. I'll get you going on it because you're on this webinar and you can take it for a spin. But that's a spot where AI can help because it's turning language into more shorter and engaging language. These are the things that you can often scare people off with. I'll be honest with you. Hefty case citations. If I open it up and it's like the usual Lexis case citations or what have you, and I can see these big things right in the middle, I know it's probably not for me. And it's not for anybody who doesn't have like access to case law, the place to punch these in and look them up. So if you're an HR professional and you're not, diving into the LexisNexis records, you're probably going, is this for me? Who's he citing this for? It's not for a class or anything. Use traditional links or just like mention it in the way that you would talk with it. Intense legalese. Footnotes are another one where if somebody sees it, and these aren't things that I'm saying make it tough to read, although that is true. These are the things that when somebody opens a post and they see these, they may go, no, this is not, no, I'm not going to read. No, I can't. It's not for me. This is not for me. And maybe you are exclusively writing for other lawyers. I've never in my, now almost 15 years at LexBlog heard somebody going, oh, we heard that we're dumbing down these posts too much. They're too understandable. We gotta bring it up. It's not, we need our citations. Somebody else really wanted to make sure that we had our citations in there. If you write for a broader audience, it will include those lawyers. But if you write exclusively for those lawyers, it's not going to include the broader audience, and people are going to back out of those posts really quickly. So hefty case citations, be mindful of that. Like intense legalese, you can see that there's language that people don't normally write with. A lot of times it can even be something as simple as the National Relations Board, parent NLRB. It's just like not how people would write an email. It's not how people would converse with one another. And when people see that, they go, this is going to be technical. This is going to be hefty. So remember, take a look at your post, and that first impression is so vital. Massive blocky paragraphs are another one. We'll take a look at that. Insanely long titles I just mentioned as well. This is key. Use language that works for everyone. I just hit on this. Don't limit the size of your audience with your language. If you're writing, if you want to appeal to that, we get our strategy questionnaires back and it's always, hey, we want to reach out to clients and potential clients, or we want to reach GCs, or we want to reach business owners. Remember the people that you're trying to reach. And then similar to our networking webinar, it's also not just the people that you're specifically trying to reach, your intended final audience of clients and potential clients, but it's also the people who could potentially serve that content up to those people. So journalists, people of that or ilk, fellow business people who might share it on the web. If they can't understand your post, they're not going to work their way through it. They're not going to share it. And you're really limiting how far that can go. I say, so this, I wrote in here as right as if you're talking to a friend. What I oftentimes tell people is write in a beers on the table kind of way. So you're meeting with somebody after work. You're saying, hey, wow, man, I've been meaning to catch up with you and talk about X, Y, and Z. We should grab a coffee or a beer sometime. Having a happy hour beer sounds a lot more fun than coffee. So this is you when you've taken, I don't know, you've had a few sips of your IPA, it's beers on the table, and you're just going, hey, this thing I saw. I've been hearing a lot more about X, Y, and Z. A big thing is work in personal anecdotes, work in your own experiences and your own stories. It really resonates with folks when you're able to say, oh, this is familiar to that one time, or oh, this changes cases that I've been working on a lot, or obviously you're not going to disclose information that you shouldn't otherwise disclose, but draw on that experience, draw on being a real person and connecting with real people. If you describe, hey, I was working in a situation that was like X, Y, and Z, the reader may go, oh, that's like us. That's like what we're going through. This is a spot where having your own blog admittedly does have its perks. I remember uh last year went on a vacation and was on a big Kurt Vonnegut kick. I was like, man, he's great. He is just riffing with his and so on and M dashes. He's just got his own style. So I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna let it rip on my own blog and just have some fun with it. And I did because it's my own blog. I can have the tone that I want to have. And this bears out in a lot of the law blogs I see where if the blog is primarily authored by one person, it will have one authentic voice that is very personable. That isn't to say to not have group blogs per se, because it helps to cover more subjects and disperse the work a little bit more. But having your own blog does have its benefits because you can use the language that you absolutely want to use, that is, you're not going to upset a potential editor or what have you just because you used a certain anecdote, or you went on a Kurt Vonnegut kick, for example, with your and so ons and M dashes. So there are perks there, but use language that works for everyone. You'll reach a broader audience. This is one of the questions we get all the time. All the time. I honestly almost surprised we haven't gotten it yet because we get it a lot. I think we've probably gotten it in our webinars already. How long should a blog post be? First, there is no perfect answer. As I say down at the bottom here, a short post can feel really long sometimes, and a long post can feel short based on how they look and how they're formatted. For the traditional blog format, this is the one I would more so recommend, is 500 to 750 words. Maybe getting up to the 1,000 to 1,200 words threshold. I will say, some say for SEO you want to get to 1,500 to 2,500. That's coming from like the Yoast type, SEO Moz type philosophy, where you're looking to create this page with like a massive amount of content that covers so much stuff in one particular area. And it's not really written for people. It's just supposed to be like a quick landing page that sucks in traffic. I would say that's not really what we're going for here. But again, the blog format plays into that. So with this SEO kick, for example, what they're trying to create is a page that is very dense with information around a particular subject. Well, if you organize your blog, right, and you make sure you keep it kind of structured, well, guess what your category archives are going to look like? They're going to look like a long page that's rich with information on a very specific subject and covers it in a number of different ways. It's going to look like one of those big anchor pages that people talk about, but it's going to be written in a way that people can actually digest the individual parts of it. They may share it, move it around. But I tend to be in the 500 to 750 range. That feels like something I can knock out relatively quickly while still also looping in potentially other perspectives and stuff like that. It's relatively quick. People can digest it passively. If they open it up in their email or somebody sends it over to them, they can see the entire post. They can see what's covered, and they can read the whole thing quickly if they decide they want to read the whole thing. So this is kind of at the core of this whole presentation and what we were kind of building to, which is kind of the art of a visually appealing post. When people open up your post, they should go, oh, yeah, this looks friendly. This looks like I'll be able to get through it. I guess they're not actively thinking these things. It isn't as if you're like, yes, this is for me. It's just what comes naturally. I don't know about you, but my fingers sit above the Apple and W key or the back key, or I guess not back key, but back on because it's like I'll open stuff in a new tab, Apple W, close it. Open stuff in a new tab, Apple, close it, because I want it to resonate. Big part of it, I will say, it seems silly, but I can confidently say now, you do want an image in your post. it's just become standard. Part of that is it shows up in previews, whether that be on social, on text, or other places. This will show up. You can see over here, this is more of the trade secret stuff we were talking about. We do try to help you out with those previews. With these are social cards. These are generated based on the design of the blog. You got the firm logo on there. This image is from the blog post itself. That looks like beautiful, wonderful Yosemite National Park. Yeah, I've been to both Yosemite and Yellowstone. Yosemite is California. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful park. You can get images from any number of places. Unsplash, which is built into our snapshot tool that we have on the back end of every blog. You can grab right from there. Those images automatically get cited in the way that they need to. There's a good depth of content in there. And you can be creative with what you pull in there. I know there's one image of the FTC on Unsplash because I've used it before, but you don't have to use something so literal. You can use stuff that is more figurative, as Robert does here. Also, Creative Commons search. If you need to, if what you're looking for isn't on one of the free databases like Unsplash, you can get into the Creative Commons, which enables you to look for, hey, what's out there in the public record that I could potentially use? Hey, what did I technically already pay for theoretically the government to produce or some entity to produce that I now am able to use? You can also go pro. I know some firms probably have subscriptions to like an iStock or something of that ilk. You can use that as well. I honestly just really like using snapshots on our platform. When I'm pulling images for blog posts to highlight on featured posts, and I may add some to client blogs, not to the blog itself, but to posts from clients as they show up on Lex blog to make them appeal better on the front page. I use Unsplash. It's quick. It's right in the platform via snapshots. Do not use Google image search and just drop stuff in there. This was a thing you shouldn't do a while ago, and it is getting more perilous. There are entire cottage industries built around people finding images that are owned by theoretically people they represent, and they go out and they try to get a few $1,000s from you because you use that. If you do this consistently, you will start getting those emails. And, there are ways that, they're kind of phony. They're kind of not. You might have to pay. You might not. You just don't want the headache. Just use images you are allowed to use. This is a big one. You have to break up your copy. This is really the name of the game. You don't want big walls of text. And you can do it after the fact. You can go through your post and just, hey, I can break this here. That's not the end of the world, even if you're just breaking it for the sake of making it more scannable. It does make it easier for writing if you do it during. And I'll hit on a couple of things in there and that. Always remember the mobile view. So you may think that this paragraph isn't big and blocky on desktop. It looks normal-ish, maybe a touch on the longer side, but it's not that long. Well, look at it on your phone. If you open a post with something that is enormously long, people will back out of it. Or even if they're reading through it, it's going to be like, man, this is so dense. It's going to feel dense. We try to help with the design where we can. On our new Stoddard theme, this is what I'm running on Past the Press Box. You can see that, let's go back to this post. You can see, for example, that the amount of words per line is short because that's a big thing. We make sure we give a lot of space and stuff like that. So you can see, for example, let's break this up. This is the way that we've styled bulleted lists. So we try to help you out there too. And then even just the blog format is, it's kind of the F format too there as well. And you'll see that on, like we showed on Cal Peculiarities too. Let's go over here. Also, headers are your friend. Headers are awesome. Use your headers. They are so nice. I've gotten better at using them in the last few years. Absolutely vital in making a post scannable. Probably the easiest tool you can use. People can navigate to what they need. So if you write a post and it's, here's what happened, here's why it happened, and here's what it means, put those headers in there. Here's what happened. Here's what it means, or here's what you need to know. Put those headers in there. It helps on search too. So for example, if you're writing about a particular subject and you're asking about, and somebody is asking a question similar to like how you phrased it in a header, that will tell Google, hey, here's what's covered in this post. Here are the big points that I've hit on this post, and that will have weight with Google. And sometimes, honestly, may even show up as a preview on Google on one of those things if you get kind of a direct hit. You can do these before or after. For me, it does help sometimes to structure my posts in that way. I have in here having trouble with the transition, not anymore. Sometimes it's like, hey, I know I want to hit on 3 things. I'm being kind of lazy here in terms of coming up with transitions and structuring the thing, but you can just go through afterwards, drop in those things, and it's like, we don't have to worry about the transitions. Treat them similar to titles that you want the point to be in there and clear, but they should be a little bit shorter than the traditional title. Mention the transition. H3 is my go-to. You'll see the headers on the platform. This is standard across the web. Everybody may have a different size for what is their H3, H4, H5. As you go down in numbers, you go up in size because, of course, that makes sense. But H3 is my go-to. I use that the most. But also, you can have headers underneath headers where you're going, okay, H3 is the big thing, but let's make it even more scannable and use that as well. Questions also work really well. What does this mean? What does this mean for employers? If we go back to Cal peculiarities, you can see, for example, hey, it starts with the work week. And again, these are probably bolded in there, which isn't bad, or are a little smaller, but you can make these bigger if you what you want. It's like, hey, hospital accounts for hours, what's in, what's out. We've got our list here, which is a great accidental segue. But you can see this is highly scannable. It's a little bit longer because it's hitting on a very complex subject, but you can see, hey, I can navigate through this post and find what I need to be able to find. But some Scattershot tips from blogging and from school. Crush the intro. You can fake structure with transitions and headers. It's a big, big thing. I will say, yeah, Canva can be a good place to get images as well. That's good, especially for social. I would say it's really good for, because they also, I think, lean on Unsplash too. I would say Canva is really good for extending the reach of a blog post on social, which may actually be the topic of our next webinar. So if your blog post is 4 things employers need to know about the non-compete stuff, you can use Canva to turn that into a slideshow on Instagram. And when people want the full depth of stuff, you can go over to the blog and get that as well. But yeah, some Scattershot tips here. You can fake structure. If you add in transitions and headers after the fact, everybody will think that you had this plan and this outline and you've been working on this forever. And if you add in transitions and headers after the fact, it's just the same as if you were in elementary school and created this perfect outline in advance and you were going to hit everything. No, you just did it after the fact, and all of a sudden it looks like you knew what you were doing the whole time. A conclusion, I often look at that as a kickoff. This is what we would use in traditional journalism stories, but I think works really well in blogging. Is the conclusion is the kickoff is where you describe what's next. So when you close it out, it's like, the cliche one is like, we'll see what happens for here. But for, like, if you're describing the FTC's decision yesterday, the kickoff is, all right, next step in the process is this is going to obviously be challenged by business interests and what have you. We'll have more coverage on that as it comes. Mix in your personal anecdotes. Be a real person. I do this on my blog nonstop. And again, it helps because it's my blog and it's what I'm writing about, and I know what I'm trying to share and what I'm trying to not share. But mixing in personal anecdotes is how you connect with real people, is how you show, hey, behind this keyboard is an actual real person. If you're quoting stuff, you can build around those. This is probably a little bit different, where there's the biggest departure from like traditional reporting writing to blog writing, is you're not drawing necessarily like on interviews and stuff like that. But you can treat the things that you found or the things that you're citing as quotes. So for me, if I was writing a story about a basketball game, or if I were writing a story about interviewing a player at the Mariners or something along those lines, and I have my interview, I've gone through my interview and I know which quotes are really good. And then I can go through and I start laying out the quotes on a page on a way that tells a story. And then I go through and I fill in the gaps. I fill in the bridges between quotes, and I fill in the evidence and the context and what have you. But same for, hey, I want to hit on a few different points, or hey, I want to cite a few different pieces of information. You can kind of lay that out on the page and then work through with some after the fact stuff as well. But yeah, those are the things drawing from experience. Let's see if there's anything else here we missed in our technical difficulties. I guess it's these specific slides. It's just like, no, I don't want to show those, but okay. Um, oh yeah, engaging with others. That's also, it looks good. Engage with folks, cite folks. That's one of the easiest posts to write. Here's this thing I saw. Here's the most interesting part of it. And here's the takeaway. Utilize your block quotes. That makes things scannable as well. And it shows engagement with the community at large too. If you show that you're listening to what other people are putting out there, if you're linking to them and engaging with them, it shows that it's personal. It shows that it's not a white paper. It shows that it is indeed a blog post. So people can get through that as well. As I hit on a couple, as I could hit on some housekeeping, I will say, I know we're a little bit over. I appreciate everybody's patience with, you can see I'm clicking and it's refusing to move. I don't know what's going on here. Somebody will be like, oh, you probably had this key pressed down or something. I don't know. But on some housekeeping, I will say, if you're at your firm and you say, hey, I would love to have this or a similar presentation for our lawyers, don't hesitate to reach out to us at LexBlog. We're happy to help, whether you're a client or a non-client. Happy to sit down with your team and talk through whatever element of blogging you want to talk about, or if you just want to say, hey, we have a blog, we don't know what to do, can you please give us the basics? Happy to talk through that. For those who don't know, LexBlog provides a platform and a service that we take care of everything but the writing. So strategic consultation, SEO, the platform, the updates, tools like the image library and stuff like that. If you're looking for a place to get started, we have our new Stoddard theme, which will give you a Lou demo as well, and can really get you up and going fast. So don't hesitate to reach out. It doesn't look like we have any additional questions, and we are a bit over. I appreciate, again, everybody's patience there towards the end. Hopefully the session was helpful, and we'll be back the last Wednesday of next month. We'll see you next month. But yeah, if you have any questions, if something comes up after the fact, don't hesitate to reach out to me personally. It's Colin@lexblog.com, COLIN @lexblog.com. But until next time, have a great one. Take care, y'all.